Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, so today, kind of getting started back up on a project that we got started on a while back, and it's just kind of been waiting on us to get some things out of the shop, out of the way, before we kind of kick back into gear on this. This is the John Deere Amazon number 6 cane mill that we actually started on a while back, and it looks like Maggie's going to come over here and check things out. So this cane mill belongs to a viewer. He brought it down to me quite a while back. I've had it way too long, and asked me if I would do a restoration on it. We did take it apart previously. I did a video on this. It's been several months ago now. Once we took it apart, got disassembled, I took everything over to a professional sandblasting outfit. They sandblasted everything. They put primer on everything, just kind of getting it ready to start working on. When I got the parts back, just didn't have room to bring it into the shop. It's been in my storage building, and but today we are getting it down here, and now that I've kind of got some things cleaned out in here and got some room, we're going to get back on this project and try to get this cane mill knocked out. So that's what we're going to be working on. I think that the first thing I'm going to do is this piece over here. This is a base that was made to mount this on. It's out of some I-beam or whatever. It came with it. We had this sandblasted, it primed. I went ahead and got it painted black. First thing I want to do, because we're going to kind of be building up on this, building the whole thing out on this platform, I'm going to get some 4x4 blocks of wood and kind of mount them up underneath the bottom so that you can come in and with the pallet jack or forklift or whatever and pick it up. And so that the mill is not sitting, the metal is not going to be sitting directly on the ground if it's outside. You have a wooden barrier between the two. So let's do that, and then we'll start figuring out what we need to go from there. So we've got these metal pads down here. That's 32 inches. This side should be the same. 32 inches. I'm going to go cut a couple of 4x4s. There's some holes already in these. I think I'm going to run a lag bolt down through and just lag that piece of wood up under the bottom. Again, that'll just kind of keep it up off the floor and let me be able to get in there with my pallet forks or pallet jack, whatever, and pick it up and move it around. All right, I've got this up on some 4x4s now. These are treated 4x4s, and they're just lag bolted in place. So I can move that around very easily now, and that gives me a good foundation to kind of build things up as we go. Next, I think what I want to do is get over here. There's a casting that's kind of the base casting on this that I've got over here, and I'm not ready to start building this thing out at the moment, but when I do get to that point, I want to be able to just go ahead and do that. But before I can start building up on it, I need to get that piece painted. So I'm going to go ahead and take it back in the back shop and get some paint on it. He wants this painted John Deere green, green and yellow. So the main castings will be green. We'll be doing some, I think, the gear works and stuff. He sent me a picture of one that he had seen, the colors, and that's kind of what we're going to do on this one, is do something very similar. So let me get that casting out. I'm going to get it back there on the in the back where I can paint it and go ahead and get that painted. And I'm going to have to paint both sides. It's going to take a day or two to get it painted and let it get dried before I can mount it. So I want to go ahead and just get that process started. And I may go ahead and do this top piece while I'm at it. That piece isn't going to, it's ready for paint. The side pieces here, we'll get to those in a minute. We got to pour some Babbitt on those, so I want to pour the Babbitt before we paint it, but I can at least go ahead and get those two pieces going. So let me get those out. Those are heavy, and get those where I can work on them. All right, I got the gantry over here, and we're going to start shoveling some of this stuff around. I got this big Deere on top. It can probably go ahead and be painted, but it's not as high priority, so I'm going to hold off on it. Plus, it's going to be painted yellow, and these other parts are going to be painted green. So I think I'm just going to get it out of the way for the moment. I think I'm gonna put some cardboard up underneath this. Probably need to do the other piece as well. I'll just make less of a mess while I'm painting. All right, drop that back down. Here we go. I've got some John Deere green paint, and we're going to start painting these castings. I got them turned upside down, both of them right now, where I'm kind of doing the bottoms of them. I'll start with that. We'll let this cure really good before I flip it back over so nothing sticks or anything like that, and do the other side. But anyway, nothing fancy here. I'm just using an enamel paint, which is what I like using on the old machines. I use it all the time on all kinds of restorations. And this happens to be Rust-Oleum, which again happens to be one of my go-to paints. It's good paint. It seems to hold up well. If you can get it in the color you want, you don't have to go get something custom mixed or anything. If I do have to get something custom mixed, I tend to use a Sherwin-Williams enamel, commercial grade enamel that I can get locally here. I got a Sherwin-Williams store that will color match whatever. But since this was available, already pre-mixed, I found this at a Tractor Supply. That's what we're using. All right, I'm gonna get these painted and we'll be back. All right, I got a coat of paint on the bottom surfaces here. We're just gonna let this cure, like I said, a couple of days. Enamel paint, it's extremely durable once it fully hardens and sets up, but it will really often take a week or two for it to really get hard. So before I flip this over, I like to just kind of let it cure for a little while and kind of get set up a little bit. And then we'll flip it over and paint the other side. But I want to do the bottom first because this is the part you won't be able to see. So if I do get a little bit of sticking or something, it's not the end of the world. Yes, I paint with a brush, particularly when I'm painting castings like this right here. I like to get my paint on thick. I like to be able to, there's little holes and porous places in here. I like to be able to get it down in there. You can work that brush back and forth. And quite honestly, guys, I'm just not set up to spray with an air sprayer out here in my shop. I don't have the equipment, and I really don't have a place that I can kind of curtain off or whatever, or seal off without getting paint overspray everywhere. I will spray with a rattle can. I can control that a little bit better, but a sprayer, it just, like I said, I'm just not set up to do it out here in my shop. But honestly, on castings, I prefer painting with a brush because I can get it on good and thick, and I can get it down in all those little crevices and stuff. Whereas with a sprayer, you're just kind of painting on the top. You don't necessarily get it worked in. That brush will work it into those areas. If it's something like sheet metal or something real smooth, yeah, spraying is the way to go. But on castings, I really like using a brush. That's my personal preference. So anyway, we'll let this set up with this beautiful shade of John Deere green, and I'm going to get to work on something else while this is doing that. So just take a moment here and look at these. These are the side castings. These will be set up and supports the rollers. This right here is the bearing surface for the main top roller, and there's a couple of places down here in the bottom which will hold some adjustable bearings that will do the bottom rollers. But what's interesting on this cane mill is that this area right here, you can tell that this has been kind of hollowed out in there in preparation for Babbitt to go into. So a Babbitt bearing is poured into that one. But the interesting thing is the top half of the bearing, you got a little adjustable cast iron piece, and it takes a bronze bearing that fits on that, and your top bearing is bronze and your bottom bearing is Babbitt. Now I had some new bearings poured. We're going to have to machine these and make them fit and all that. But it is interesting to me that the bottom is Babbitt and the top is bronze. Reality is that almost all your pressure on this is going to be on the top bearing, because when you're feeding the cane through, it's going to be pushing the pressure upwards. The bottom bearing really doesn't see that much wear, and on a lot of these cane mills, they don't even have bearings on the bottom surface. They only have them on the top. In fact, these out here only have them on the outside half, because the pressure is always pushing kind of diagonally down in that direction. They don't even have top bearings on them, or bottom bearings, I guess you'd say in this case, the side that doesn't have any pressure on it. And this appears to be the way this was made. I've looked at some other of these Amazon mills that are out there, and every one that I've seen has Babbitt on the bottom and bronze on the top, although some of them have been retrofitted with just pouring Babbitt on the top, where they didn't go to the trouble to, get new bronze ones cast. This is something I actually had to design patterns and get all that done. I had the originals to work with. They're pretty worn. But we were able to get new ones cast, and again, that just kind of fits in there, and downward pressure on there. There's kind of a U-bolt that goes around this to pull down on it. All right, I'm not going to work on these right now. I want to get these bearings poured before we paint them, and that's going to be later on. I got some other things I got to do before then. In fact, we're going to get started on that right now, looking at the journals and seeing whether they need to be built up, whether they're good to go. Because that's going to determine what size these get poured. So this pallet here basically is all the little miscellaneous parts off of that mill that we had sandblasted and primed. And what I want to work on next is I want to get the rollers out of here and get them over on the lathe. And I want to clean the priming areas off, because we got bearing journals that'll be fitting up in there that don't need to have primer on them. So I'm going to clean all that off, probably just use some sanding paper, and evaluate what those journals look like and decide whether they need to be welded up and turned down, just turned down for a bearing fit, or if they're good enough as they are. Just looking at them without looking at them hard, most of them appear to be in pretty decent shape. So I'm hoping that we're not going to have to do a whole lot of work to those. So let's get these over on the lathe where we can really look at them a little bit closer. I'm going to use the jib crane to pick this up, and I've got some straps here that we will use to pick it up with, and I'm putting a lark's head in here instead of just wrapping it over the end, because once I get this mounted, I won't be able to get the strap, won't be able to slide the strap off the end, but like this, I can get it out of there. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and we'll pick it up with the jib crane and put it on the lathe. So this is the first time that I've really used this new electric hoist that I put on here. Kind of excited about not having to pull that chain fall around. This will be a lot easier. All right, let's get this hooked in. And take her up. Let's see, slide this down. Tightening up my 3-jaw chuck here. This particular chuck is a interesting chuck. It's got a 3-jaw scroll in here that I'm tightening up right now, but you can also adjust each individual 3 jaws independently. So you can fine tune it, get something running perfectly true in it, which is kind of neat. But one thing I don't like about this is it's got a really, really fine adjust on this scroll. It takes forever to move this thing. I kind of am thinking I might want to find a 3-jaw chuck that's a little bit more of a standard style type 3-jaw chuck that's just quicker to adjust, and the adjustability of the individual chucks or jaws is nice. but it's also kind of aggravating. It has its place. Let's see here. Here we go. I need to finish tightening this end up. Support that end. All right. I'm gonna get these straps out of here. Well, I got this over in the lathe, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on with it, what has been done in the past, etc. So a couple of things to note. First off, there is some pitting in here, some lines in here. Pitting. It's in that bearing journal. And it's on the other side as well. This side, I think, is probably a little bit, I don't know, the other side may be a little bit worse. But what's more concerning to me as I'm sitting here looking at this is, look where this has been welded in the past. This has been welded in the past, and that's not even on there. So they stick welded this, it looks like. They may have MIG welded it, I'm not sure, but they're trying to weld steel to cast iron. That doesn't work. Yeah, this should have been brazed. Anytime you try to weld on cast iron, you're going to get a crack in there. It's going to bust out. It just, I shouldn't say anytime. There are ways it'll work, but you just can't go over to any old welder and fire it up and go to welding on cast iron and expect it to work. And this is a case where they got a mess. I'm not sure what this little outside ring is even for. I don't think it's original. This looks like steel on the outside, cast iron on the inside. There's also wooden plugs in here, in these holes. I'm not sure what that's all about. And I can tell it's kind of off balance, so I bet there's a bunch of sand and junk inside of this drum. We probably need to get it cleaned out. Let's look at the other side. In some ways it's better, in some ways it's worse. Let's take a look at it. All right, so wow. Lots of welding. So they welded the shaft in here. It's all busted out and broken, and it's cracked all the way around. I mean, it's not holding it together at all. This piece looks like it was welded all the way around, and it's all completely broken out. I don't know if you can see back there on the back side of it. It's welded to what I think is steel, all right, but again, up here in the cast iron, there's a gap all the way around back there in the back. It has completely busted out. And then you got this little ring here. It's welded on, but that's steel on steel. So I think that's all right. I'll also show you over here on the back side, there's a gap. Let me show you this. So right here, notice this gap? Don't see a gap on the other side. I think I know what someone has done. And I think it's going to be a big mess to fix. But yeah. So here's what I think happened. I'm going to change the camera view here. So what I think has happened is at some point in time, somebody has come in here, put this up on a lathe, and they have turned down the original drum. They made a steel piece of tubing here to slide up on this, probably trying to repair it where it had worn down over the years, and then tried to weld it all up and put it back together. And my guess is, in the process, they probably also took the original shaft out of this and put a new shaft in there, because this shaft is in pretty good shape except for some pitting right there in the bearings where it's set in the water. Out here on the ends, it's in really good shape. I don't think that's the original shaft. So I think that somebody took the old shaft out, put a new shaft in, tried to weld it up, didn't work, and they also turned this down, put a steel sleeve on top of this, tried to weld it up. Yeah, it didn't really work either. I talked to the owner of this mill the other day, and he made the comment that before he took it apart, that the rollers looked like they had a lot of wear in them, like they didn't come as close together as they should have. And I think the reason is that when they did this, they didn't really do it right. Frustrating. So what do we do about fixing it? That's the big question. What do we do about fixing it? I've got a couple of ideas in my mind of what we could do about fixing this, but I think that before I get too deep into that, I want to have a conversation with the owner and kind of see what their thoughts are. Yeah, I don't know what, this looks like they have some plugs. There's a plug of some kind right there. There's one right here that looks like it's been welded up. There was a plug right there. That must be how they keyed it in there. That's just a drill hole. This is a mess. This is a mess. Yeah, let me talk with the owner and kind of see what he thinks. Hi guys, so I've talked with the owner. We've had a pretty long conversation. I've got some more of the story of what's going on with this, and we've talked about some options. I've talked to some other people, and I think we've come up with a game plan. So first off, what's going on here with this? He told me that his dad actually had some work done to this mill back in the 1980s because the diameter of the wheel, I think I mentioned this before, had gotten so small just from years of using it that it wasn't able to crush the cane properly. And so what he had done is he had a shop wherever, I don't know where, but they came in and basically they machined off the outer surface and they made a steel sleeve to go up on this, and they tried welding it all together and putting it back on here. They put new grooves in here, whatever. And it probably was fine when it was new, but that's been 40 years ago, and all the welds have cracked. It's a mess now. So that was what happened and what their solution was. In retrospect, trying to put steel on cast iron, probably not a good idea. Cast iron is brittle. When you weld it, it tends to get super hot and it wants to just crack right there wherever you weld it, if you're like arc welding. The other thing that you run into is that steel and cast iron have different temperature ranges, movements, or whenever they heat up and cool down. So when you heat up steel and you heat up cast iron, they move at different rates. So over, again, years of just normal seasonal variation in temperature, going from freezing in the wintertime to 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summertime, just that temperature swing and the materials expanding and contracting at different rates will cause those welds to break. Welding cast iron to cast iron with the right setup, using nickel rods and doing preheats and everything, it's doable. But welding steel onto cast iron, never a good idea. Never a good idea. And that's kind of what they did here. What do we do to fix it? Well, I think what we're going to do is we're actually just going to make a whole new drum. We're just going to start from scratch, and we are going to actually cast a new drum for this. And we'll do it just like it was done originally. So what is this going to entail? It's going to entail some pattern making, having a special pattern made, and we will then have this cast. And then we'll have to come in and do the machining and everything to it. I've talked with my foundry guys and everything else and kind of come up with some, rough estimates on what it's going to cost. I went back and told him, he said this mill belongs in his family. I think that if this was just a mill he had bought to restore or whatever, it'd be one thing, but because it has the family history, they're willing to spend the extra money to do it right. So I think that's what we're going to do. It's going to be a lot of work. And it's going to honestly slow this project down because we're going to have to get this done. I can still work on a lot of these parts and kind of get it ready to put back together, but this mill can't go back together until we get this done, and that's going to require having patterns done and all that. I'm currently doing some research and trying to figure out exactly the best way about doing the pattern making for this. I got some options, and my foundry wants to think about it, how they want to do the molding of this. That's going to kind of determine how we make the patterns. So more on that coming, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. That's kind of the direction I think we're going to go right now, is make a new one. There you go. That's where we're at. And with that, I think that's going to pretty much put a halt on this video for today. Yes, I have other stuff I'm going to be working on this mill, and I'm going to go ahead and probably continue doing some of that. But knowing that this project just had the brakes put on it, until we can kind of tackle the pattern stuff here, I've got a couple of other cane mills that are ready to go back together as well, and I'm probably just going to go ahead and knock those out of the way, get those out of the way, and while we're working on the pattern making for this as well. And this will be kind of a higher priority to get the pattern done, but the rest of the mill I think I'm just going to kind of put on the back burner and probably focus on a couple of those other mills until we can get this going. That's where we're at, guys. Yeah, I was not expecting all these issues when I got in here. I hadn't had a chance to really look at all this stuff really close until just now, so that's kind of where we're at. And with that, that's a wrap for the day. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Those thumbs up and comments are always greatly appreciated. It helps out tremendously on the site. Yeah, leave comments, give that thumbs up. Big deal, really does help. Big, huge thank you to those who support the site financially through Patreon and PayPal. That helps as well. And guys, with that, I'm getting out of here. We're going to go. We'll catch you on the next video and get back to working on the next thing that needs to be done out here in the shop. So with that, we're going to sign off. We'll catch you on the next video again. As always, thanks for watching.